fills the air. Goblins, ghosts are everywhere. In the dark night, phantoms dance. Down the lane, strange creatures prance. All Hallows Eve, let's gather round. Hear the ghostly shrieks and sounds. Names that rattle, voices babble, shapes that huddle, creatures scuttle.
Who are you? Why are you crashing into this graveyard? Don't you know only skeletons like me are allowed here after midnight?
Oh, be quiet, you old bag of bones. The trouble with you skeletons is you have no guts. All of us witches are flying around tonight. I just had a little trouble with my broom's motor. But if I did have to crash, a cemetery's a great place to be on Halloween. There'll be lots of excitement here tonight.
I just hate it. It's so nice and quiet here most of the time. I can't stand all this excitement. I'm afraid I'll have a heart attack.
How can you have a heart attack when you have no heart?
Listen, what's that I hear?
Well, if your bones would stop clattering so loudly, maybe I could hear. I think it's a story.
Blood in the cellar. Once there was a little girl named Sally. She lived with her mother and father in a farmhouse. Now, Sally's bedroom was upstairs, 8 steps up, and all alone. Her parents slept in a room on the first floor. Now, Sally had a problem. She was afraid of many things. She was afraid of the dark, and she was very afraid of going up those 8 steps to her little bedroom. And every night she would put off going to bed as long as she could. Her mother would say, "Bedtime, Sally, go on up to bed." "Oh, Mama, I'm afraid." Sally, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. There's nothing to be afraid of up in your lovely room. But Sally was always afraid. Now, one day in late October, Sally's mother was cooking dinner, and she said, "Sally, go down to the root cellar and bring me up 3 potatoes." Now, if you think Sally was afraid of going up to her bedroom, she hated going down to the root cellar even more. "Oh, Mama, I'm afraid." "Sally, you stop that nonsense this minute. I need 3 potatoes. You go and get them. There's nothing to be afraid of." So Sally cautiously opened the door to the cellar and slowly walked down the creaking stairs. And she inched over to the corner. And there, on the floor, in front of the potatoes, was a pool of blood. Sally was frozen with fear. And then the blood spoke. "If you tell anyone about me, I'm gonna get you." Sally raced upstairs. "Oh, thanks, Sally. Just put the potatoes over there," said her mother without even looking up from what she was doing. I didn't get the potatoes. They're not there." "Sally, they are so. I put them there myself earlier in the week. Now you just go down and get them." "Oh, Mama." "Sally." So Sally dragged herself down the steps again. There, on top of the pool of blood, was a body. And it said, "If you tell anyone about me, I'm gonna getcha." Sally ran up the steps. Mommy, too many spider webs. I couldn't get the potatoes." "Sally." So Sally slowly went down the steps again. There was the pool of blood with the body on it, and on top of the body was a head. And the head said, "If you tell anyone about me, I'm gonna getcha." As frightened as Sally was, she couldn't go back without the potatoes, so she held her breath, and she grabbed them, and she brought them up. "That's a girl, Sally. It's about time. See? There was nothing to be afraid of." Well, Father came in, and they had dinner. Sally didn't eat very much, and after dinner, Mother said, "Sally, you'd better go to bed early." So Sally quickly ran up to bed. She tried to breathe quietly, and she pulled the covers up to her chin. And then her mother called up, "Sally, I slid the lock on the cellar door. There's nothing to be afraid of." And Sally was under the covers in her cozy room. But then she heard a voice. "Sally, I'm on the first step, and I'm coming up to getcha." Ooh. Sally put her hands over her ears. "Sally, I'm on the second step, and I'm coming up to getcha." Oh, what can I do? I can't climb out the window. It's too small. "Sally, I'm on the third step, and I'm coming up to getcha." Oh, I know. I'll go down and I'll call my father. Oh, no, I can't. I'd have to pass it on the stairs. Oh. "Sally, I'm on the fourth step, and I'm coming up to getcha." Oh, Sally put a pillow over her head. "Sally, I'm on the fifth step, and I'm coming up to getcha." Sally scrunched down under all the blankets to the bottom of the bed. "I'm on the sixth step, and I'm coming up to getcha." Sally got under her bed, but it sounded louder. The stairs were squeaking. "Sally, I'm on the seventh step, and I'm coming up to getcha." Oh, I'll call my mommy." But when she opened her mouth, no sound would come out. "I'm on the eighth step, and I'm coming in to getcha." And the door creaked open. "And I've gotcha." And that is the story of my friend Sally, who was afraid of the dark.
That was so scary. I feel real unhappy. I think I want to go home. Except I already am at home. That's my tombstone you crashed into. I hardly ever come out of the grave.
I bet they call you Lazy Bones.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Who?
Who's who?
You sound like an owl. Who is me? I'm Georgie Ghost. I've come to the Halloween party.
Oh, I'm so scared of ghosts. Sometimes I see them flitting over my grave at night. I'm so frightened they'll kill me.
What's the matter with you, knucklehead? They can't kill you. You're already dead.
Don't scold me. You'll make me cry. Sometimes I get so depressed, I think I'm alive.
No need to get scared of ghosts. Just a few simple rules to follow. If you have to take a walk along a lonely road at night, always carry a piece of bread crust in your pocket or somewhere about you. This will not only protect you from ghosts and other frightening things, it will even keep you from being afraid.
I hear tell that if you ever see a ghost and are brave enough to walk around it 9 times, it will go away.
But I don't know how to count. And besides, I get dizzy if I go in circles.
Well, just remember, if you have to pass by a haunted place at night, turn your pockets inside out, and the ghost won't hurt you.
Just light a candle at night. A ghost will never come near you if you have a candle burning.
That's silly. How can I light a candle in the grave?
The best charm against ghosts is daybreak. We all have to disappear with the first light of day.
Oh, goody. It will be nice and peaceful here again.
I personally don't like ghosts. I could try to say nice things about them, but I'd rather tell the truth.
You're a fine one to talk. Is that really your face, or did you just put it on for Halloween?
Look who's talking. You have a face that looks better from the back.
And you have that faraway look. The farther you get, the better you look.
Maybe you're not as dumb as you look. You couldn't be. How about surprising me? Say something intelligent.
Well, what for? You wouldn't understand it.
I'm getting so angry, I think I'm going to kick you.
Don't do that. Don't ever kick a ghost.
Don't ever kick a ghost. Once there was a man going along a road one night on his way home from somewheres. He was going along. He had to walk past the fields, past the houses, past the church, past the graveyard, before he came to his own place. And just as he was passing by the graveyard, he saw something white lying in the road ahead. It was about the size of a cat, he said. When he came up to it, he gave it a kick, and it was suddenly as big as a dog. "That's funny," the man said to himself, and kicked it again. The white thing swelled up as big as a cow. That man was so scared, he ran and ran and ran. He must have got home at last, because the word passed round the town. Don't ever kick a ghost.
Mr. Ghost, I wouldn't think of kicking you. You might kick me back. What are those funny things you're wearing on your feet?
Can't you tell? They're boots.
Oh, and what are those things on your eyes?
Easy. They're spookticles.
Ghosts don't scare me. I just heard a story about a scared ghost.
The Scared Ghost. Once upon a time, there was a poor barber who did not live happily with his wife. "Why did you marry me?" she complained, "if you did not have means to support a wife? When I was in my father's house, I had plenty to eat, but it seems that I have come to your house to starve." The barber's wife did not content herself with words. One day, her anger over her husband's small earnings drove her to attack him with a broomstick. Stung with shame on account of his wife's beating, the barber left his house, taking the tools of his craft, razors, whetstone for sharpening them, scissors, and mirror, and vowed not to return until he had become a rich man. The barber traveled from village to village. Toward nightfall one day, he came to the outskirts of a forest and lay himself down at the foot of a tree. It so chanced that this tree was the home of a ghost. The ghost, seeing a human being at the foot of his tree, became angry and thought only of destroying him. The ghost leaped from his tree with outspread arms and gaping mouth and stood tall before the barber. "Now I am going to destroy you," he screeched. "Who will protect you and save your life?" The barber, quaking in every limb from fear, his hair standing erect, did not lose his presence of mind. Shrewdly, he laughed at the ghost. "You will destroy me. I'll show you the ghost I have captured this very night and put into my bag. Right glad I am to find you here, for you shall make one more ghost for my collection." The barber reached into his bag, pulled out a small mirror, and held it up so that the ghost saw his own face. "Here you see one ghost which I have already caught," said the barber. "I'm going to put you in the bag to keep this ghost company." The ghost, seeing his own face in the mirror, was very frightened. "Oh, sir, please don't put me in your bag," he cried. "I will do whatever you bid me. I will give you whatever you want." "You ghosts are a faithless lot," answered the barber. "You will promise and then not deliver." "Oh, sir, take pity on me," pleaded the ghost. "Give me a chance to do your bidding. If I fail, then put me in your bag." "Very well," said the barber. "First, you must bring me 1,000 gold coins. Then, by tomorrow night, you must make a granary at my house and fill it with rice. Go now and get the gold immediately. If you fail, into the bag you go." The ghost gladly agreed to the conditions. He went away and quickly returned with a bag of gold. The barber was delighted beyond measure at the sight of the gold coins. He ordered the ghost to see to it that the granary was built, and quickly, too. "You only have one night to get the job done." During the small hours of the morning, after midnight and before daybreak, the barber knocked at the door of his house. Now, his wife had spent many days and nights regretting that she struck her husband with her broomstick and caused him to leave his home. When she unbolted the door and saw him, she was overjoyed, for since he had been gone, she realized that she loved him dearly. Her husband told her of the ghost and poured a glittering heap of gold coins from his bag to prove that he spoke the truth. The next night, the fearful ghost raised a large granary at the barber's house and worked the livelong night carrying large bags of rice till he had filled the granary to the brim. The uncle of this terrified ghost, seeing his nephew work so hard, asked what had happened to him. When he heard the story, the uncle ghost laughed. "You fool," he said. "The barber is a cunning fellow. He has cheated you. He can't bag you." "If you doubt the barber's power," replied the nephew ghost, "go and learn for yourself what he can do." The uncle ghost went to the barber's house and peeped in through a window. The barber felt a blast of wind and knew it meant a ghost was near. He saw the uncle ghost peering in at his window. Immediately he placed a mirror before the uncle's face. "Aha!" the barber screamed. "A new ghost to put into my bag." The uncle ghost was frightened out of his wits by the sight of his own face. He promised to raise a second granary at the barber's house that very night and fill it with corn if the barber would not put him into his bag. The bargain made, the ghost went away to begin his work. And that is the way the barber became a rich man in corn, in rice, and in gold.
That was a very dumb ghost to be tricked that way. My family is really smart. For example, my cousin in Spain who met Esteban the tinker. It was a good meeting for both of them. Just listen.
Esteban and the Ghost. A long time ago, in Spain, there was once a great gray castle. No one lived in it because it was haunted. And yet, every night, a thin, sad voice moaned and wept and wailed through the empty rooms. And on Halloween, a ghostly light appeared in the chimney, a light that flared and died against the dark sky. Now, many people had tried to exorcise that ghost, but they had been found in the morning in front of the cold fireplace, dead. Now, one day in October, there came to the village a jolly tinker whose name was Esteban. While sitting in the marketplace mending all the pots and pans, he heard about the haunted castle. Tonight was Halloween, they said, and if he would wait until dark, he would hear the wailing and see the ghostly light. And they told him the story of all the brave men who had died trying to banish the ghost. The owner of the castle would give 1,000 gold coins to anyone who could succeed. Aha! When he heard that, Esteban chuckled. If that was so, he would certainly go to the castle this very night and see what he could do. But he would need plenty to eat and drink and a fire to keep him warm. And so the villagers brought him wood to burn, bacon and eggs to eat, a flask of wine, and a frying pan. And Esteban set out on his donkey as dusk fell. The villagers watched from afar, sure that they were saying goodbye to the brave young man. The night was dark and windy, with rain in the air. He left his donkey grazing outside and carried his supplies into the great hall. It was inky black. Bats flew in front of his face. The cold penetrated his bones, so he lost no time in lighting the fire in the huge stone fireplace. Ah, he sighed as the flames began to warm him. He sliced some bacon and laid it in the pan. How good it smelled. He had just lifted his flask to take a drink of wine when down the chimney there came a voice. Oh, me. Oh, me. Esteban put down the wine. Not a very cheerful greeting, my friend. And he turned over the bacon in the pan. Oh, me. Oh, me. Esteban put his bacon on a piece of brown paper to drain it. Then he broke an egg into the frying pan, and the voice called, "Look out below! I'm falling!" "All right," said Esteban, "but don't fall into my frying pan." And there was a thump. And there on the hearth lay a man's leg. It was clothed in half a pair of brown corduroy trousers. Esteban ate his egg, a piece of bacon, and drank from the flask. The wind howled. "Look out below! I'm falling!" Another thump. And there on the hearth lay a second leg, just like the first. Esteban moved it away from the fire and piled on more wood. Then he broke a second egg into the pan. "Look out below! I'm falling!" "Fall away," Only don't spill on my egg." Another thump, heavier than the others, and there lay a body in a blue shirt and a brown corduroy coat. Esteban was eating his third egg and the last of the bacon when the voice called again, and down fell one arm and then another. Now, thought Esteban, I think I'm rather curious to see the head. "Look out below! I'm falling!" And down the chimney came the head. It was a good head, with thick black hair and a long black beard. And then the parts of the body joined together, and a living man, or his ghost, stood there. "Evening," said Esteban. "Would you like some bacon and eggs?" "No, I want no food," the ghost answered. "But I'll tell you this, you are the only man not to die of fright before I could get my whole body together." "That's because they didn't have enough sense to bring food and fire with them," said Esteban, and he started to cook some more. "Wait a minute," pleaded the ghost. "If you will help me, you will save my soul and get me into the kingdom of heaven. Listen, out in the courtyard, under a cypress tree, there are 3 bags buried. One of copper coins, one of silver coins, and one of gold coins. I stole them a long time ago from thieves, and I brought them here to hide. But the thieves found me and murdered me and chopped me into pieces. But they didn't find the coins. If you dig them up and you give the copper coins to the church, the silver coins to the poor, you can keep the gold coins for yourself. And then I will have paid for my sins, and I can go to the kingdom of heaven." "Well," said Esteban, and he hurried out to the courtyard and dug, and he found the 3 bags of coins. And then the ghost said, "Now take my clothes from me." This Esteban did, and the ghost disappeared, leaving the clothes lying there in the courtyard. Esteban carried the coins into the great hall. He made himself more bacon and eggs and went peacefully to sleep. The next morning, the villagers came for his body, and they were surprised to find him alive, and he told them the story. And before their astonished eyes loaded the coins on the donkey's back and departed. First, he collected the 1,000 gold coins from the grateful lord of the castle. Then he gave the copper coins to his village church and the silver ones to the poor. And with the gold coins from the ghost and the 1,000 from the Lord, he lived in idleness and contentment for many, many years. And I have been told he consumed 2,000 eggs and 700 pounds of bacon during his lifetime.
I never really had a conversation with a ghost. They always seem to be flitting around so much they never stop to talk. I don't know much about them. Mr. Ghost, I guess your idea of fun is a funeral. What's your favorite game?
Ooh, that's easy. We love to play peekaboo. But what we like to do best is to go haunting. I'm not going to haunt you folks. After all, you're just as creepy as I am. But I'm going to let you in on some ghost secrets. Here are some tips on how you can tell if there's a ghost around. Ever see a candle burning blue? It's a sign a ghost is present. And if you ever see a bat flying about, beware. hear? That's a sure sign a ghost has come in with one. Cats crossing your path are a sign of ghosts. Not just black cats, any old cats. Which reminds me, did you ever hear about the boy who drew cats?
The Boy Who Drew Cats. A long time ago, in a small country village in Japan, there lived a poor farmer, his wife, and their children. Everyone in the family worked very hard. When the oldest son was only 10 years old, he helped his father in the fields. The little girls worked with their mother almost as soon as they could walk. Later, when the girls grew older, they stood ankle deep in the muddy waters of the rice field, helping their mother all day long. The youngest child, a little boy, didn't seem fit for hard farm work. Although he was cleverer than all his brothers and sisters, he was quite weak and small. People said he'd never grow very big. This worried the poor farmer and his wife. What would become of their son if he didn't grow strong enough to become a farmer? One day, the farmer and his wife took their little son with them to the village temple. There they asked the priest to take the boy as his pupil and teach him all that a priest should know. The old priest spoke kindly to the lad and asked him some hard questions. The boy's answers were so clever that the priest agreed to take him into the temple. The farmer and his wife went away happy. Their problem solved. Their son would become a priest. The boy learned everything that the old priest taught him. But he had one fault. He liked to draw cats during study hours, and to draw cats when cats ought not to have been drawn at all. Whenever he found himself alone, he drew cats. He drew them on the margins of the priest's books, on all the paper screens in the temple, and on all the walls. Several times the priest told him this wasn't right. Still, the boy did not stop drawing cats. One day, the priest caught him drawing some very clever pictures of cats on a paper screen. The old priest was upset that the boy continued to be disobedient. There was only one thing to do. "My boy," said the priest, "you must go away from this temple at once. You will never make a great priest, but perhaps you will become a great artist. And now let me give you a last piece of advice, and be sure you never forget it. Avoid large places at night. Keep to small." Well, the boy didn't know what the priest meant by saying, "Avoid large places, keep to small." He thought and thought while he was tying up his little bundle of clothes to go away. He didn't understand those words, but he was afraid to speak to the priest except to say goodbye. He left the temple very sorrowfully and began to wonder what he should do. He was afraid to go home. He felt certain his father would punish him for being an artist when he should have become a priest. And then all at once he remembered a village a few miles away which had a very big temple with several priests. He made up his mind to go there and ask to become a pupil. Now that big temple was closed up, but the boy didn't know this. And the reason that it had been closed was that a goblin had frightened the priests away and had taken over the place. Some brave warriors had gone to the temple at night to kill the goblin, and they had never been seen alive again. But nobody had told these things to the boy. He walked all the way to the village, hoping to be kindly treated by the priests. When he got to the village, it was already dark. All the people were in bed. At the end of the main street, he saw a light in the temple. People who tell the story say the goblin used the light to tempt travelers to ask for shelter. The boy went at once to the temple and knocked. There was no sound from inside. He knocked again. He knocked again. Still nobody came. At last he pushed gently at the door. It wasn't locked. He went in, and he saw a lamp burning brightly, but no priests. The boy thought someone would surely come very soon, so he sat down to wait. He noticed that everything in the temple was gray with dust and thickly spun over with cobwebs. These priests, he thought, would certainly be happy to have a pupil who could keep the temple clean. The boy looked around the room. The dust was a great puzzle. But it was quickly forgotten when he noticed several big white folding paper screens standing in a corner. What harm, he thought, in painting a few cats? Surely they would make those plain screens much more beautiful. After he had painted a great many cats on the screens, the boy began to feel sleepy. He was just about to rest his head on the floor to sleep when he remembered the warning, "Avoid large places at night. Keep to small." Oh, the temple was very large. As he thought of the words, the boy began to feel a little afraid. He decided to search for a small place to sleep. At last he found a little cabinet with a sliding door. He crawled inside and shut himself up. He lay on his side with his knees drawn up to his chin, and he fell fast asleep. Very late in the night, he was awakened by a most terrible noise, a noise of fighting and screaming. It was so dreadful, he was afraid even to look through a crack in the little cabinet door. He lay very still, holding his breath from fright. The light that had been in the temple went out, but the awful sounds continued. If anything, they grew more terrible in the darkness. All the temple shook. After a long time, silence came. Still the boy was afraid to move. He didn't move until the light of morning sun shone into the cabinet through the crack in the door. He climbed out of his hiding place very cautiously and looked about. The first thing he saw was that the temple floor was covered with blood. And then he saw lying dead in the middle of the floor an enormous rat, bigger than a cow. It was a goblin rat. But who or what could have killed it? His eyes scanned the room. When the boy saw the screens, a terrible cry burst from his lips and echoed in the empty temple. The mouths of all the cats he had drawn were red and wet with blood. With the passing of time, the boy became a man, and the man became a great artist. And even today, travelers in Japan can see some of his pictures of cats.
We witches can take the form of cats, black cats, and if one ever crosses in front of you, it will put a spell on you.
Sure, you never can tell when a witch is flying about. But there's one sure sign of a ghost. We never have a shadow. Just notice on this bright moonlight night.
Oh, that's right, poor ghost. You have no shadow. Look at the beautiful shadow I make.
You remind me of a jigsaw puzzle. So many of your pieces are missing.
Pay no attention to her. She could make a living souring milk.
Oh, I just swallowed a bone.
Are you choking?
No, I'm perfectly serious.
What you need is water. Listen.
The Water Ghost of Harrowby Hall. The trouble with Harrowby Hall was that it was haunted, and what was worse, the ghost did not merely appear at the bedside of a person, but remained there for 1 whole hour before it disappeared. It never appeared except on Christmas Eve, and then as the clock was striking 12. The owners of Harrowby Hall had tried their hardest to rid themselves of the damp and dewy lady who rose up out of the best bedroom floor at midnight. But they had failed. They had tried stopping the clock so that the ghost would not know when it was midnight. But she made her appearance just the same, and there she would stand until everything about her was thoroughly soaked. Then the owners of Harrowby Hall closed up every crack in the floor with hemp, and over this were placed layers of tar and canvas. The walls were made waterproof, and the doors and windows also, in the hope that the lady would find it difficult to leak into the room. But even this did no good. The following Christmas Eve, she appeared as promptly as before and frightened the guest of the room quite out of his senses by sitting down beside him and gazing with her cavernous blue eyes into his. In her long, bony fingers, bits of dripping seaweed were entwined, the ends hanging down. And these ends she drew across his forehead until he fainted away. He was found unconscious in his bed the next morning, simply saturated with seawater and fright. The next year, the master of Harrowby Hall decided not to have the best spare bedroom opened at all. But the ghost appeared as usual in the room. That is, it was supposed she did, for the hangings were dripping wet the next morning. Finding no one there, she immediately set out to haunt the owner of Harrowby himself. She found him in his own cozy room, congratulating himself upon having outwitted her. All of a sudden, the curl went out of his hair, and he was as wet as if he had fallen into a rain barrel. When he saw before him the lady of the big eyes and seaweed fingers, he too fainted, but immediately came to because the vast amount of water in his hair trickling down over his face revived him. Now, it so happened that the master of Harrowby was a brave man. He intended to find out a few things he felt he had a right to know. He would have liked to put on a dry suit of clothes first, but the ghost refused to leave him for an instant until her hour was up. In an effort to warm himself up, he turned to the fire. It was an unfortunate move, because it brought the ghost directly over the fire, which immediately was put out. At this, he turned angrily to her and said, "Far be it from me to be impolite to a woman, madam, but I wish you'd stop your infernal visits to this house. Go and sit out on the lake if you like that sort of thing. Soak in the rain barrel if you wish, but do not come into a gentleman's house and soak him and his possessions in this way, I beg of you." "Henry Hartwick Oglethorpe," said the ghost in a gurgling voice, "you don't know what you're talking about. You do not know that I am compelled to haunt this place year after year by my terrible fate. It is no pleasure for me to enter this house and ruin everything I touch. I never wanted to be a shower bath, but this is my doom. Do you know who I am?" "No, I don't," returned the master of Harrowby. "I should say you were the lady of the lake." "No, I am the water ghost of Harrowby Hall, and I've held this highly unpleasant office for 200 years tonight." "How the deuce did you ever come to get elected?" asked the master. "Through a mistake," replied the spectre. "I am the ghost of that fair maiden whose picture hangs over the mantelpiece in the drawing room." "But what made you get the house into such a spot?" "I was not to blame, sir," returned the lady. "It was my father's fault. He built Harrowby Hall, and the room I haunt was to have been mine. My father had it furnished in pink and yellow, knowing well that blue and gray was the only combination of colors I could bear. He did it to spite me, and I refused to live in the room. Then my father said that I could live there or on the lawn. He didn't care which. That night I ran from the house and jumped over the cliff into the sea.
That was foolish,
said the master of Harrowby. So I've heard, returned the ghost. But I really never realized what I was doing until after I was drowned. I'd been drowned a week when a sea nymph came to me. She informed me that I was to be one of her followers, and that my doom was to haunt Harrowby Hall for 1 hour every Christmas Eve through the rest of eternity. I was to haunt that room on such Christmas Eves as I found it occupied. And if it should turn out not to be occupied, I was to spend that hour with the head of the house.
I'll sell the place.
That you cannot do, for then I must appear to any purchaser and reveal to him the awful secret of the house.
Do you mean to tell me that on every Christmas Eve that I don't happen to have somebody in that guest chamber, you are going to haunt me wherever I may be, taking all the curl out of my hair, putting out my fire, and soaking me through to the skin?
Demanded the master. Yes, Oglethorpe, and what is more, said the water ghost, it doesn't matter the slightest difference where you are. If I find that room empty, wherever you may be, I shall douse you with my spectral Here the clock struck 1, and immediately the ghost faded away. It was perhaps more a trickle than a fading, but as a disappearance it was complete.
By St. George and his dragon,
cried the master of Harrowby.
I swear that next Christmas there'll be someone in the spare room, or I spend the night in a bathtub.
But when Christmas Eve came again, the master of Harrowby was in his grave. He never recovered from the cold he caught that awful night. Harrowby Hall was closed, and the heir to the estate was in London. And there, to him in his apartment, came the water ghost at the appointed hour. Being younger and stronger, however, he survived the shock. Everything in his rooms was ruined. His clocks were rusted. A fine collection of watercolor drawings was entirely washed out. And because the apartments below his were drenched with water soaking through the floors, he was asked by his landlady to leave the apartment immediately. So, the heir of Harrowby Hall determined that something must be done. Then he thought of steam pipes. These, he remembered, could lie hundreds of feet deep in water and still be hot enough to drive the water away in vapor. So the haunted room was heated by steam to a withering degree. The scheme was only partially successful. The water ghost appeared at the specified time, but hot as the room was, it shortened her visit by no more than 5 minutes in the hour. And during this time, the young master was a nervous wreck, and the room itself was terribly cracked and warped. And worse than this, as the last drop of the water ghost was slowly sizzling itself out on the floor, she whispered that there was still plenty of water where she came from, and that next year would find her as exasperatingly saturating as ever. It was then that, going from one extreme to the other, the heir of Harrowby hit upon the means by which the water ghost was ultimately conquered, and happiness came once more to the house of Oglethorpe. The heir provided himself with a warm suit of fur underclothing. Wearing this with the furry side in, he placed over it a tight-fitting rubber garment like a jersey. On top of this, he drew on another set of woolen underclothing, and over this was a second rubber garment like the first. Upon his head he wore a light and comfortable diving helmet. And so clad, on the following Christmas Eve, he awaited the coming of his tormentor. It was a bitterly cold night that brought to a close this 24th day of December. The air outside was still,
but the temperature was below zero.
Within, all was quiet. The servants of Harrowby Hall awaited with beating hearts the outcome of their master's campaign against his supernatural visitor. The master himself was lying on the bed in the haunted room, dressed as he had planned, and then the clock clanged out the hour of 12. There was a sudden banging of doors. A blast of cold air swept through the halls. The door leading into the haunted chamber flew open, a splash was heard, and the water ghost was seen standing at the side of the heir of Harrowby. Immediately from his clothing there streamed rivulets of water, but deep down under the various garments he wore, he was as dry and warm as he could have wished. "Ha!" said the young master of Harrowby. "I'm glad to see you." "You are the most original man I've met, if that is true," returned the ghost. "May I ask, where did you get that hat?" "Certainly, madam," returned the master courteously. "It is a little portable observatory I had made for just such emergencies as this. But tell me, is it true that you are doomed to follow me about for one mortal hour? To stand where I stand, to sit where I sit?" "That is my happy fate," returned the lady. "We'll go out on the lake," said the master, starting up. "You can't get rid of me that way," returned the ghost. "The water won't swallow me up. In fact, it will just add to my present bulk." "Nevertheless," said the master, "we will go out on the lake." "But, my dear sir," returned the ghost, "it is fearfully cold out there. You will be frozen hard before you've been out 10 minutes. "Oh, no, I'll not," replied the master. "I am very warmly dressed. Come." This last in a tone of command that made the ghost ripple. And they started. They had not gone far before the water ghost showed signs of distress. "You walk too slowly," she said. "I am nearly frozen. I beg you, hurry." "I should like to oblige a lady," returned the master courteously. "But my clothes are rather heavy, and 100 yards an hour is about my speed. Indeed, I think we had better sit down on this snowdrift and talk matters over." Do not do so, I beg," cried the ghost. "Let us move on. I feel myself growing rigid as it is. If we stop here, I shall be frozen stiff." "That, madam," said the master slowly, seating himself on an ice cake, "that is why I have brought you here. We have been on this spot just 10 minutes. We have 50 more. Take your time about it, madam, but freeze. That is all I ask of you." "I cannot move my right leg now," cried the ghost in despair, "and my overskirt is a solid sheet of ice. Oh, good, kind Mr. Oglethorpe, light a fire and let me go free from these icy fetters."
"Never, madam. It cannot be. I have you at last."
"Alas!" cried the ghost, a tear trickling down her frozen cheek. "Help me, I beg! I congeal!"
"Congeal, madam, congeal," returned Oglethorpe coldly. "You are drenched, and have drenched me for 203 years, madam. Tonight you have had your last drench."
"Ah, but I shall thaw out again, and then you'll see. Instead of the comfortably warm, genial ghost I have been in the past, sir, I shall be ice water," cried the lady threateningly.
"No, you won't either," returned Oglethorpe. "For when you are frozen quite stiff, I shall send you to a cold storage warehouse, and there shall you remain an icy work of art for evermore."
"But warehouses burn."
"So they do, but this warehouse cannot burn. It is made of asbestos, and surrounding it are fireproof walls. And within those walls, the temperature is now and shall be 416 degrees below the 0 point, low enough to make an icicle of any flame in this world or the next," the master added with a chuckle.
"For the last time, I beseech you, I would go on my knees to you, Oglethorpe, if they were not already frozen. I beg of you, do not there, even the words froze on the water ghost's lips, and the clock struck 1. There was a momentary tremor throughout the ice-bound form, and the moon, coming out from behind a cloud, shone down on the rigid figure of a beautiful woman sculptured in clear, transparent ice. There stood the ghost of Harrowby Hall, conquered by the cold, a prisoner of all time. And that year, it was a very Merry Christmas for the master of Harrowby Hall.
So that's what happened to Cousin Sue. We always wondered where she went.
Listen to that terrible howling. What is it?
Don't worry, it's a full moon tonight. It's just a tired animal.
You mean a weary wolf?
Did you hear about my cousin, Casper the Ghost?
Yeah, I did. They said he always wants to ride in an elevator.
That's right. He likes to lift his spirits.
Did you hear about my cousin, Wanda Witch? Gee, is she mixed up?
Yeah, I hear she's eating scrambled eggs for breakfast.
She got scared when her Rice Krispies said snap, cackle, pop.
I hear her favorite game is hide and shriek.
That sounds like fun. I'm afraid to play games. I might fall apart. Oh, listen.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Adam.
Adam who?
Adam, my way. I'm coming in.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Alex.
Alex who?
I'll explain later. Open the door. It's daylight. It's time to go. Halloween is over. Witches' music fills the air. Goblins, ghosts are everywhere. In the dark night, phantoms dance. Down the lane, strange creatures prance. When we see the days first go, then we know it's time to go. Farewell, goodbye, until next year. Halloween is when we'll be